Hello everybody, welcome to this presentation. My name's David Cooney, I'm the CEO of Mahi, and we're going to be talking today about how it is that we reason about what size we should do a particular trade in with respect to the amount of money we have to risk in our trading. A little bit of information about us. You can obviously look us up online. What we're going to do today is try and use some of the science that's been developed around gambler's ruin and gambling theory to develop an idea of what size trades should be done in, given how much money you have to risk. There is, the broad advice to traders not to risk too much in a given trade, and there's some pretty good reasons for that, as we'll see. But it doesn't take us that far in determining, well, okay, fine, I'm not going to bet at all. How much should I bet? And very often the advice, I don't know why this is, but people say 2%. Well, how do we arrive at that number? Is it indeed appropriate? And then once we've developed the theory of all of this, we can actually look at a table that tells us or suggests to us how big our risk should be. So let's get into that. What is gambler's ruin? This is kind of the theoretical underpinning that helps us reason about how big our trade should be. This is the science behind the game. Well, the theory of gambler's ruin has always been developed out of, they call them Bernoulli trials, basically coin flipping, where you've got an equal probability of something coming up heads and tails, and you keep doing that until you have basically exhausted the amount of money that you have available to you. Obviously, if the game carries on forever and you're lucky, then there's a prospect of accruing infinite wealth. Now, in foreign exchange, it's not an even game. We're confronted by the drag, if you like, or the challenge of the spread. So we need, as traders, to be better than 50-50. If we do develop that skill, then we would expect, so long as we can continue to trade and there are a sufficient number of trading opportunities, we will make a bunch of money, and in the limit, an infinite amount of money. But that ability to trade is obviously destroyed if we go broke or we blow up, exhausting our bankroll. So, this is what the world looks like if you put 100% of your risk on each and every trade that you do. There's a prospect that it works reasonably well for some period of time, but there is a near inevitability, and we'll see this quantitatively, that you end up exhausting your bankroll. So let's now translate, that's the problem. Let's now translate this idea of a coin flip into a trading analogy. We're going to assume a very simple trading strategy where you're picking whether you think a given currency is going to go up or down. And you're going to have a very rigorous regime where if it moves up by a certain amount, you take profit. If it moves down by an equal amount, then you're going to stop out of the position. That's quite similar to the coin flip where you get paid an even amount of money. Now, we need to be more than 50% accurate in order to overcome the spread. Let's say that we are. If so, we're well on our way to doing very well out of trading, unless we have overbet, as we see under bankroll 1. If we bet a more modest amount of money, then that 55% or 60% probability of being correct gives us a P&L profile which is much more like the one in grey, on our way off to infinite riches. So this is what we're trying to avoid, is that we're actually going through the 0 point, because that's the end of our trading opportunities. The alternative of putting a modest amount of money to work in each and every trade is that we can continue to trade and we continue to manifest our skill and accrue further wealth. The difficulty, of course, is that if we put an infinitesimal amount of money into each trade, the return to our capital is insignificant. So we need to find some kind of balance between betting it all and betting something which is trivial and ultimately makes no impact upon our return to capital. So there is actually a function drawn from Gambler's Ruin that allows us to calculate what the probability of obtaining in the theory, infinite wealth depending upon our initial bankroll. And this is what this table represents on the screen at the moment. So if we started out with 1 unit of risk or 1 unit in our bankroll, and we were taking 1 unit of risk, i.e. we were going to take profit when we made 1 unit, or we were going to stop out if we lost 1 unit, even with our 55% chance of winning, we're only 18% to actually clear the trees. In other words, we're 82% to exhaust our bankroll. If we decide that we're going to risk 10% of our bankroll with each trade, we've now increased our probability of obtaining infinite wealth to 86.5%. In other words, we've reduced our prospect of exhausting that bankroll to more like 13.5%. We start to sort of see from this table, perhaps, why there is this common wisdom to only bet 2% of your bankroll, when we see down the bottom of the table at 1 unit against 1 unit of risk to a 25 unit bankroll, there were actually near 99.5% to remain in business and to continue to make money out of trading. The question of where you wish to sit, in this table is really quite individual and depends upon individual risk preference. But at least now we have some sort of science to reasoning about, in an objective sense, how much we think we should be risking and what the trade-off is in terms of our probability of exhausting our bankroll. And that, I think, is really about it in terms of the science. The fundamental decision from here about, what you want to apply, as I say, is a pure question of utility. Some people may think that it's more important to have a riskier portfolio where the returns to equity are greater. But one thing we have to be clear about, obviously, is that there is that explicit trade-off. The greater the return to equity for a given trading strategy, the greater the probability of blowing up. Just reason your way, I think. Feel free to reason your way through that presentation, and then at least you have an explicit basis for deciding where you want to sit. 25 is, I'm being asked if 25 is 2.5% or 25%. The way in which this is represented in the table is that 25 is your initial bankroll. So in other words, you have 25 units of bankroll and you are taking 1 unit of risk. You're prepared to risk 1 over 25 on each trade. So, 1 over 25 obviously is 4% of your bankroll. So, I wanted to keep it reasonably short. It is a pretty short presentation. It's a pretty short subject. The essence of it is that there is a framework out there to reason with, and I just wanted to present it with you today. Now, I'm going to anticipate one question which is going to come up, which is why, if there's this discussion about infinite wealth, why in reality more people don't achieve it. Well, there are actually probably 3 problems. One is, not everybody can achieve 55% probability of winning. That's why we work away at this game and try and develop our skills so that we are objectively the minority who are able to achieve that. Second challenge is that this presumes that you can trade at will, that these opportunities set up on a very regular basis, and indeed they may not. The more discriminating the strategy that you employ is, the less frequently it will set up. So there isn't just an infinity of trading opportunities, obviously. And then the third problem, which is the classic rich man's problem, is that as your wealth compounds and you have more and more risk to deploy, you start to crowd the trade, the Warren Buffett problem. So, that is obviously a nice problem to have, but it does exist and explains why in practice people don't go on to make an infinite amount of money out of trading any asset. So with that, I would turn it over to any questions. Is there anything I can answer for you? All right. Doesn't seem like there is anything. I just want to thank you for the time today. And if I can help you any further with this, explain it any further, please feel free to send me an email at david.cooney@mahifx.com. Thank you very much for your time. Oh, sorry. One pops up just as I thought I was being released from school. The question is, what is the leverage or margin allowed on MahFX? The answer to that is it depends upon the asset that you wish to trade. If it's one G10 currency against the other, it's 50-1. If it is a G10 currency against an EM currency, it's 4%. And if it is gold or silver, it's 6%. So, that's more than enough rope, we believe, particularly when you look at the science of the probability of people exhausting their bankroll. And it's part of the reason why we sort of don't agree with the notion of providing 100 or 200 or even the insane 400-1 leverage. That really is just inviting people to blow up in incredibly short order, and we just don't think that's a responsible thing to do. Oh, one other, okay. Cheers. One other thing that I should mention, of course, is that I was reminded by talking about the different margin requirements for different assets. What's the reason for those different margin requirements? Well, it's because those assets have different volatilities. The more volatile an asset is, then the greater the dispersion, the greater the risk on any given holding period, which effectively means, that one way of thinking about this, I've done this presentation as if you were risking 1 unit against making 1 unit against losing 1 unit. If you have an asset which is more volatile, all other things being equal, the payoff or the loss will be, say, 2 units. That being the case, it's effectively like trading with half of the bankroll. So the riskier the asset, the smaller the leverage employed should be, and we're expressing that in the margin regime that we offer to clients. So I'll just give it a couple more seconds if there are any other questions that anybody has. Great. Okay, well, again, if I can help any further with any of this stuff, please just drop me an email. It's david.cooney@mahifx. And in the meantime, thanks very much for your time. Cheers. Bye-bye.